Well, I think the question of becoming is for sure something that interests me. The question of identity is something that I've been really invested in trying to unpack what is identity, what is national identity. And I grew up in a secular family, and a Zionist family. At some point, I decided to go to art school, and at later point, I decided to be an artist. Because, I mean, when you go to an art school, it does not mean that you will be an artist. But for me, I left Israel in '96 after my graduation of the school in Jerusalem, and I decided to go and to become an artist. Was actually related to my biography, or very much related to trying to understand through art what is an identity, what is a place, how an identity is being constructed. And many questions that I would not pose probably, maybe I would not ask the same question if I was not living Israel. I think the fact that I left Israel for various reasons allowed me the space to ask the questions. The question of what are we, as Israelis? In our identity card, we are Israelis and Jewish. I mean, some of us Arab and Israeli. Most of Israelis will tell you when they're growing in Israel, in the secular context, they will not affiliate themselves as being Jewish. They will say, I'm Israeli. And it became interesting for me, this Jewish identity. Once you step out of the Israeli context and you live in Europe, you become the Jew. So it's always your identity is described by the outsider, by the other. So you are the other, and in this context, I'm the Jew. I'm the Jew because I'm in the minority. And this, every Israeli will tell you that suddenly they became Jewish. And not necessarily religious, but this identity has suddenly become very clear, that I'm the other, I'm the Jew. And it became interesting for me in the discussion of identity, and I often played with this, but also not only in terms of the Jewish and secular and not secular, but also in terms of gender issues. Some of my works are very clear about that, where I try to go sort of under the skin of the Israeli male figure, especially in the photograph of Herzl, the leader of the sort of the person who imagined a Jewish state for the Jews in the 19th century. He's like a figure that every kid knows. It's like we are being indoctrinated with this figure as our forefather. So when it comes to identity questions, I try to look at it, how it is constructed with the context of Israel, but then in the larger context of Jewish history. So it always kind of go back and forth, and then also the gender issue, of course, is part of the deal, so to say, because Israeli identity is so much connected to masculinity. So I try to kind of undermine it and maybe kind of play with it and show the kind of. I try to kind of play with it and reverse it and put things upside down in order to actually question it, because it could have been different. It's not that there were not female involved in the construction of that place, but they were just pushed aside, like in most societies. By the fact that I physically lived away from Israel for many years, it really helps also to mentally practice these questions of what is this place that I grew up. And this perspective is very important, I think, for... I'm talking about Israel because this is what is familiar to me. This is where I grew up. This is what really shaped me. So I'm talking in this context, but to me, it's very clearly, it is not only Israel, it's very universal. One has to step out from comfort zone to be able to ask any questions. Comfort zone, I mean also to leave home for a moment. And this has clearly become, the question of home and homeland became very important for me once I left home and homeland. And what is this homeland? And why was it propagated all the years as the only place for the Jews, as the only place that gives safety to the Jewish people? And of course, this goes to a much bigger, we can talk about it for days. It's a long, long conversation, and many people thought about it and asked about it and wrote about it, and it became a political tool for many leaders, for politicians to use it. And I see my job as an artist to unpack it, to question it, to reflect on it, to put it in a kind of new context, in a dangerous context, in order to continue to ask questions, because that's all I can do. I can maybe if I cannot change reality, I can participate in the act of imagination, in the act of imagine something different.
Wracajcie już dzisiaj, a odmieni się oblicze Polski. Odmieni się oblicze Europy. Odmieni się oblicze świata. I wy staniecie się inni. Wracajcie nie jako cienie przeszłości, ale nadzieja na przyszłość. Witamy!
There was a time, like 10 years ago, that I really believed in my activism as an artist to change reality. And I spent a lot of time in the occupied territories. And these are the people that I portrayed, are people that I met. And some of them actually were my teachers during the time that I lived in Jerusalem. And I always felt super weird. But this was the normal. This was the normality. This was like the reality that I knew. This is the reality that you have settlers that coming from the occupied territories, and they come to teach, and they all come with their gun to the school, and which was super weird. And they were part of my landscape, let's say. And for me to confront this kind of masculinity and kind of very extremist religious belief, I have to radicalize it. Yeah, Malka Germania is an epic film that is creating alternative history. It is using the concept of Messiah from the Jewish context, that one day the Messiah will come and make things better in the end of days. In artwork, unlike in reality, you can bring the Messiah and you can have create a kind of fantasy film. And to me, in the kind of creating in the protagonist of this messianic protagonist allowed me to maybe touch the unconscious, or speak about the unconscious, or imagine what would be the unconscious in the context of Germany and Jewish history. And the premise of the work was like the idea of the redemption. We were going to be redeemed once the Messiah will come, and we can rid of the burden of history, the Jewish German history. You know, living in Berlin, you see a big community of Israelis that migrated, and it's already interesting to look at it. I mean, thinking that only 80 years ago, there was this idea to get rid of all the Jews, which was not successful. So it's interesting to the place that is so traumatic in the context of Jewish history. There are so many people find their salvation or finding a better life. And I think that's, first of all, an interesting phenomena. I personally never felt comfortable in Germany. Maybe it's due to the fact that my father told me never step on never step on a German soil. Maybe I have this echoed in my mind all the time. And so for me, the Malka Germania is somehow, in this logic, creates conditions in which things are reversed, things are mystically happen. We don't know what makes the Albert Speer come out of the Wannsee. Architecture that connects to a very powerful wish. Connected to power, connected to imperialism, well, obviously connected to the Roman Empire. I think this basically, I feel this never left Germany. I would say that the entire Malka Germania began with the dream that I had of me changing the signs in Prenzlauer Berg. And I didn't know if it's a kind of homesick. Being homesick, I wanted to have the Hebrew in Berlin, or it wasn't clear to me. So there are many different stories, and many of the stories also connected to the concept of redemption. And in the context of Zionism, the way I see it, redemption only comes for the occupation. And one of the signs in a street corner that you can understand only if you speak Hebrew or read Hebrew is it says Redemption Street and Occupation Street. And this relationship is interesting for me, that in order to receive your redemption, better times, better days, safer place, you need to occupy. And that goes into also the logic of Malka Germania. And I know it's confusing, and I know it's like it's not one linear answer to anything, but it is again questioning. Do we, on the back of other people's, we can get our salvation, liberation? And who are these people? So, I mean, it is, again, is trying to make things more complex.
Thank you all for coming. Shall we proceed?
Thank you, Madam President. As all of you already know, we have a new leader of the free world, Arnold Twittler. I say leader, an unqualified, narcissistic, pussy-grabbing, megalomaniac.
Just the facts, please.
Those are the facts, Madam President.
The film 2 minutes to the film 2 minutes to midnight is actually a film that began in the process of actually asking the question, what if women rule the world? In 2016, I asked the question. And not necessarily 2 minutes to midnight is answering the question, but it's giving an image. It gives an idea. It gives a It creates an alternative reality. It creates a situation in which women are in power.
Before Twittler was elected, we had begun our process of disarmament. But now there are some amongst us who are calling for reconsideration.
Yes, absolutely. Continuing with this process of disarmament is a major security risk.
Dealing with what often is to be considered men talk. Because in the war cabinet, you will find mostly men. And it is it is an inversion of Dr. Strangelove war room. So rather than having only men around the table, like in Dr. Strangelove, we see only women.
I would like us to reach a consensus on this. So in light of the gravity of the situation, I've asked Vice President Saragusti to invite advisors to support us in making our decision. Can you bring them in now, please?
And the film is obviously very reflective film. It's not really. It is a fictional condition in which women will practice in security and weapon industry and peacemaking processes. They come and they bring their own knowledge.
As you know, the doomsday clock is now at 2 minutes to midnight due to President Twittler increasing his nuclear stockpiles. What can we do to deal with the crisis we're facing?
But the conversation shifts from a discussion about threat and Mr. Twittler to gender questions and they continuously asking questions and reflecting at the same time on feminism. And I think it's really the question of feminism. If I had around the table only feminist women, maybe it would be a different discussion. Not all of the women I think they're feminists in this context. But I think it's a little bit. I mean, the problem that I see in 2 minutes to midnight is that women come from a very different background, and often when you try to solve problems, there is a very clear context. Women have an experience beforehand, you know. So really have to look at 2 minutes to midnight as a clear experiment on the question of, and what happens when a group of women meet and try to solve a problem. I think there is many new thoughts are coming out of the film on the question of gender and masculinity so I don't necessarily think that we get an answer. The answer comes from the artist. The artist decides that the end will be like bearing of the weapon.
Well, I think we should not romanticize about our power in this world. The rules of this game was designed by men. There was this vision of rationality, a belief in the ability of human beings to really decide in the right way about the future of the world. And that is where I agree. The deterrence is really a myth about the rational man, about science, about progress, about a world that could be controlled.
I think there's a very interesting nexus here between nuclear weapons and gender, and the idea that power is weapons, power is hypermasculinity, power is being militaristic. I think that's a very gendered
I go back to the term political imagination is the idea that you try to imagine a possible future that is undermining the present time. So in reality, women are not ruling the world, but through this pre-enactment, you can create a condition, a reality, and it's not utopia because it happens now that women are ruling and they make decisions and they comment and they reflect and they use the power. So it's it's an exercise. It's a way to exercise a different reality. And that's, I believe it's a very powerful tool.
I think we should stay calm for the time being and think about what might be motivating this.
Why don't you make the call and get him assassinated now? That will also shock them, and that will allow us and buy us some more time.
The military has been trained to continue if the president is dead. The point here is he's provoking you with this. Now, you either respond to this provocation by doing the same thing, and then it escalates, and then you have your all-out nuclear war, or you don't. There is only one way to de-escalate, and that is not to escalate.
What I can advise is to go directly to the diplomatic solution without even bringing nuclear weapons into the table. We don't need to talk about nuclear weapons. We don't need to use them as a retaliatory object.
October 7th is it was for sure one of the most shocking events and terrifying events. And but it did not start on October 7th. It was, for me, super hard to react to it because I had no statements coming out. I really felt like I need to be silent and I need to mourn like many other people because also it's definitely, it is beyond what humanity can perceive and understand the level of violence that we see and witness and heard and it all happens in real time. And we all knew somebody who was killed or murdered in that day. So it's like, because Israel is such a small community I really see how it affected a lot of the Israelis, even not living in Israel, in a very, very strong way. It is a huge paradigm shift in the consciousness. It was, in the context of art, it was really shocking to see the reaction that I felt, to the degree that I have no one to talk to. I cannot speak to the people that are not able to see what happens and continue to criticize Israel, because I've been for years, that was my voice, very critical voice. paying for it in a way, for being called anti-Zionist, anti-Semite, whatever. I'm fine with that. But there is a moment that I cannot participate and I don't feel any connection or relation to the people that continue to only criticize and not seeing what happened. Anytime I need to be silent right now. I don't, because it's also because I deal so much with these questions, because I deal so much, even I don't live in Israel, I'm very connected to, I had to pause, what's going on here? And all I could do is to listen to people that were able to kind of analyze it or kind of put it in a larger context. As much as possible, stay away from social media, even it's because it became a propaganda platform. People watching TikTok 20 seconds about the conflict and thinking that they know anything about it, and it was really worrying. I still think it's very worrying. What Israel is doing right now, of course, it's... I'm sorry, I cannot support it. I cannot support. I understand the need for safety, I understand the need, but it's beyond. That's not going to bring any safety to anyone to continue this war. Yes, and it becomes less and less safe for Israelis to be outside of Israel, and it goes against to the question of safety. I mean, Israel is the safest place for the Jews? I mean, this is really something that I've been thinking about, and I don't have an answer. But things are not black and white. Black and white stays in Marvel films, maybe the bad and the good. We cannot. It doesn't work to have black and white. It just doesn't, it's not like that. We know it. You know it, and I always believe that there is a space for art to take part in political discussion and make things more complicated and maybe to tap into places that are not very comfortable. And trigger a discussion. I think if what art can do is only to trigger more dialogue and discussion. And I think, yes, the only way is to understand that there's another narrative, there is another story on the other side, and being aware of it. And for me, it's very, very important that I talk about that my art is, I'm choosing always to speak from my perspective. I would never speak from the perspective of a Palestinian, because I'm not. And all I can speak is from my perspective, and I can analyze and criticize and from my perspective, and I feel comfortable, and I can defend myself if it's needed. But I cannot speak in the name of other. But I'm aware that there is the other. And I think that's the only thing we can do. And I think what is really, really important is to keep imagining. Imagination is very, very important. We cannot, if we are not able to imagine possible change, or that is very, very problematic. And we have to keep on practicing possibilities of different life, and thanks to the art we can do that. At least we can visualize it.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the
Wow, these are very big questions to end. I don't know if I have answers to the question of where I feel at home, because it's changing. Feeling at home has a lot of needs for me, a lot of I would say elements. Of course, when in the Hebrew language, when I speak Hebrew, I feel this is one part of me. This is one Yael. There is some kind of comfort within the language, because I feel we all grew with a kind of mother tongue. For me, of course, the question of homeland, and exile, these two binaries, I want to get rid of them. I think of it a lot, and because it became a political tool. And when it becomes an ideology and a political tool, it's very dangerous, because it's make us all blind. And I want to get rid of that. I want to think of myself as a quantum. I want to be in these two places at the same time. I want to be the outside and the inside, and this is for me a way to keep going.